This is Dante. He's 22, actually. Sometimes he just screams a lot, and it sounds like an infant screaming. He does it every time he goes to drink water. He screams into the water before he drinks it. It keeps you on your toes. My name's Misty Talley. I am a filmmaker, a director, and editor, sometimes producer. I'm located in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I'm originally from Lafayette, Louisiana. It's in the middle of an area called Acadiana, like the Cajun area of America. So I'm Cajun, and that's the sort of homeland of the people. I think I first started being interested in filmmaking in probably 1994. When I was a child, I really wanted to be a paleontologist. Jurassic Park came out that year. I couldn't wait to go see it. Every morning I'd wake up and ask my parents how many more days until Jurassic Park. On the day of Jurassic Park coming out, I was like, all right, I get out of school at 2:30. You get home from work at this time. So I just couldn't wait. On that day, when my dad was driving me to school, he passed up the school and I was like, am I not going to school? Where are we going? And he's like, we're going to see the first showing of Jurassic Park. We watched it twice that day. Definitely, I think sitting there watching Jurassic Park, I'd never seen effects like that. And the blending of the practical with the CG, and it was seamless. And it's better than things the next 10 years of CG. It's better than that. Better than things that I see now. And I think it felt so real that I was like, oh, it's real. You could make things and they're basically real in the world of this story. Man, it'd be cooler to make dinosaurs and monsters than it would be to study them. I think that was shocking to see, and I needed to see more. At the time, there wasn't any special features or there wasn't any internet, but it was such a big blockbuster movie that I remember Fox would play making of documentaries. I'd record at home the Jurassic Park making of documentaries to watch later on VHS. I think then my interest really shifted from dinosaurs to monster movies and making movies. I've watched Jurassic Park a number of times I can't count. It's definitely a triple digit. I had the clamshell VHS. I had it on DVD. I watch it digitally all the time. Same goes for Jaws too. That one as well. That's one I can't even tell you how many times I watched. Every point in my life that there's been some sort of shift in my life or I gain a new interest, there's always a movie that I associate with it. I could point to a movie that shaped kind of what my thoughts of how I wanted to move forward with my life. I'd say maybe in the mid 90s when I was in middle school, 97 or something, I got really into trauma movies. Greg Araki, just kind of like underground cinema, trash cinema, if you will. That whole vibe was, oh, movies can be anything. I've never seen anything like this. And that always like really sucks me in. Then I went to art school where I studied video installation art, films as art, and there too I fell in love with the films of Alejandro Jodorowsky, who did El Topo and Holy Mountain. It was like, whoa, movies can be anything, and I understood it from this whole other place as I grew, and I feel like movies are always kind of there for me in that way. I went to school at UL Lafayette, and later I actually taught there. But at the time, there was no film in Louisiana. During school, I went for fine arts and with a focus in new media, video installation art. And I did learn editing software for that, and that's how I got a job at a post house when I graduated. My work started kind of shifting towards more freelance rather than working in a post house. And New Orleans just has a much larger film community than Lafayette. It has a lot of community to it, which I think is kind of hard to find in film. Everybody really comes together to help each other out, and all the post-production workers here, we have like a Discord that we're all on together. It's, I feel like, really unique that everybody kind of rallies around each other instead of seeing it like a competition. Ideally, everybody's working and there's too much work for everybody. And so we're training up new people and it grows and grows and grows. A rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that's always true. That's the truest saying I've found. It means so much, and it brings people so close, and we can do things to protect each other too, which is great, and make sure that nobody's getting taken advantage of, and hey, does this sound normal? And it's just comforting, and also makes you feel not alone even when work is slim. Oh, we're all kind of going through this together, and I think it's a really unique community. There's a great quote about Mississippi, but I think it really applies to the South in general. To understand the United States, you must first understand a place like Mississippi. I think that's a really poignant quote, and the problems elsewhere are the same, but they have a sort of facade over them. And here it's just raw. What you see is kind of what you get. It's a good reason why a lot of horror takes place in the South, is there's a mystique to that. And it's almost like you're walking into a rotting home and you see that it's rotting, as opposed to a new build that's shit construction and it's going to fall apart in 5 years or whatever. It's you see the problems up front, and they're dark, and there's not an easy way to deal with them. That's the whole idea of art, right? Is you kind of are, whatever you're surrounded with, you want to reflect back out. I think it's a huge part of what inspires me, and especially things that I'm developing. The SyFy channel is my first work in the film industry, and each step I've made in my career really was with the SyFy channel, whether it was training to become an assistant editor. The first movie I ever worked on was a movie called Monster Wolf. I was hired as an assistant editor and had no idea what I was doing, and I was trained on the job. A few movies later, getting a shot on a movie that they were ready to scrap, I got a shot as an editor, and I had an idea. Hey, if you guys do like a one-day B-unit shoot, then I can use that. So I wrote the subplot for them to do like a cheap one-day shoot, and then after that they went from not having a movie to having a movie. It was awesome. After that I got a lot more shots to edit, and then I started directing short films. Producer that I was working with all the time, Daniel Lewis, who was a contractor through SyFy, he found out that I had a short film because I was raising money to go to Cannes. He decided to just fund my trip to Cannes, and he said, when you get back, let's talk about you directing. It was the short film I made, Tend to Sing, that went to Cannes. I met Sam Clater, who is a local producer. He was like looking for local directors to start working with. Me and him clicked and got along, and he watched the short and he was like, I wish it ended like this instead of that. And I was like, me too, actually. And he was like, what if I pay for you to reshoot the ending, and then you add me as a producer, and then I'll start submitting it to things. That's how we sort of hooked up. And then cinematographer Matt Bell, who was really good friends with Sam as well. The three of us, the first feature that we did together was Zombie Shark, which is the first movie I directed, the first feature Sam produced, and the first feature that Matt shot. And so the three of us worked as a little tribe and supported each other, and we still kind of keep that association because it is helpful to have these sort of groups and companies out there. The work we did together, I mean, that'll always exist. But yeah, it was definitely for that sort of moment in time when we were doing our shark movies. I love Ghost Shark. That's a crown jewel for me. That is a good one. It's very constraining to have this sort of budget that you do for a movie like that. The director, Griff, really was desperate to find a workaround, and he's like, I can't just have 5 CG shots. The shark's gotta be in it as much as I want it to be in it. Jokingly, one of the VFX guys was like, well, you could just shoot a rubber shark on a green screen and we can just slide it around. And he was like, that's exactly what we're gonna do. There's no CG in it. It's just 2D, literal sliding around a toy shark on green screen. It's a 5-minute clip of a shark on a stick that turns on green screen, and they just turn it, and then my job was just slide it around because it was just a shark shot from basically every angle to be slid around and moved. However, it doesn't actually have any articulation. It just is a model. Chomp in every angle, not chomp in every angle, and just kind of, it was just a 5-minute clip, and they're like, this is all of our shark in the entire movie. And I was like, okay, we'll see how that goes. And it worked out great. It is just a delight. I love the effects in it so much, and it's a crack up, but it works perfectly also. I guess it's over the line of cheesy, but I mean, the story plays. You can't complain about Ghost Shark. I think it's one of the funnest movies I've worked on. Yeah, no, in mine, it's a lot of sharks where they shouldn't be. They come to us in my movies. There's a couple of practical shark stories I have because I'm huge on practical. In my first movie, one thing that drove me absolutely insane was we couldn't get remote control shark fins that we could like drive through water. And we'd had other movies I'd worked on, like Swamp Shark. They made a fin that was like kind of neutrally buoyant and they just drag it by a boat, like a string on a boat, but it didn't work because there's wake in front of it. It turned into putting it way out and trying to film it as it's reeled in, and then you speed that up, and it had this weird thing that didn't look great. And I was like, there must be a remote control one, and there wasn't in the world that we could find. After Zombie Shark, which I absolutely hated the fin on it, I got approached for the second one. I was like, we got to figure the fin thing out. There's a company in Baton Rouge, Louisiana called CFX, and they're famous for masks, any official merch for Game of Thrones, the White Walker masks. And so it was the week before kind of like the show and tell. We go and everybody is stressed. I see on their face when we walk in, okay, we understand now why this doesn't exist. They were like, either this is gonna work and it'll be like crazy success and we'll have like the only one that's ever worked, or sorry, don't know what to tell you. Well, it's going to be a fin on a string, you know? They did it. They figured it out with a weird concoction of trolling motors hooked together in a very specific way. You can see it in some shots, I think, because we couldn't remove it from all, but there's a tiny little wire coming out of the very top of the fin where the remote relay thing is. After that, it was, you know, in all my movies, I was like, we need the fin. And then they're my special effects dudes always. They're great. They built rubber sharks for us. Ozark Sharks, there's a shark that jumps onto a porch of a cabin and they're beating it with paddles and stuff. And you gotta have like a stand-in for that sort of stuff. Otherwise it just looks, you know, weird. And so they built a rubber shark sushi that then is in all of my movies from that point on as like the stand-in shark. It died in Santa Jaws. We had to cut it into pieces, and then they'd also built the animatronic head of the shark that is in Zombie Shark. All of the improvised weapons in Ozark Sharks, there's like an eccentric backwoods character, Jones, who builds all these weapons out of farm objects, and they built all of those, and they worked too. There was the cannon, the harpoon cannon on top of his truck. It actually fired harpoons, and they were like, hey, do you want to shoot harpoons at the end of the day? I'm like, yeah. It actually came from, in the film before, Mississippi River Sharks, the lead character who plays a shark movie actor who's famous for, you know, being in all these shark movies. He mentions that he's in a movie called Santa Jaws. The network, when they saw the movie, they were like, we love all the movies he lists off, especially we want a Santa Jaws, make that one. So that was the sort of birth of it. Stranger Things is very popular. And in this case, not only did I need to find 4 actors that were over 18, that looked like they were 14, 15. I also had to find people that looked like their mom and dad and uncle. I had to match. It was a lot to keep in mind for sure with casting. Pretty wild to watch it and think these are all adults. So that was like the big challenge of that movie. It was just such a good cast, and the script is so fun. Normally we're required to have approved name actors in it, and they'll say, you have to cast this person, or who are you thinking, and they'll approve or not approve. And he was like, just do the best cast you can. And so that freedom, I think, was super helpful. Santa Jaws is awesome. That's another movie that I'd love to do a sequel to Santa Jaws. Me and Reed, who started it, have a really great idea for Santa Jaws 2. I love Jason. He is awesome. He's super fun, and he's been on like a million sets. He has a lot of ideas. As he talks on set, you're like, you could be directing this movie. He's a real pro, especially for Mississippi River Sharks. He absolutely loved the idea of playing himself in an alternate universe where he was this action star. He was like, I'm gonna do my own wardrobe. He came to set wearing guy liner and stuff, and he really embraced that character in a way that was so funny. I could tell it was a really fun role for him. Shark movies are kind of a perfect monster movie because it's like this sort of known monster, and they have this intense mystique. And you know this is a creature that put into their environment, you're going to be annihilated, you know, one-on-one. You have the element of water, which right off the bat is a terrifying element. You know, if you can't see to the bottom of a lake, a lot of people, it triggers this really primal fear that the shark itself is a creature and the environment that you encounter sharks in as a character in itself. The equivalent of making a space movie about scary aliens. You're in an environment you're unaware of. There's some unknown creature coming for you or a known creature, and it's gonna stop at nothing. When I was making my very first shark movie, it was the first feature film I ever directed. And I was talking to my other friends who were almost all filmmakers, and many at the time were making kind of independent films, festival films. One of my best friends, I remember she said, "Are you going to use your real name?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Well, what if you want to make real movies? This is a real movie." And she's like, "Well, yeah, but you know what I mean." I do think that people kind of put it in this other category. It kind of is like what you want out of movies. For me, I don't know. I want something fun. I don't like going to film festivals because I feel like it's just a marathon of who can make you the saddest, which doesn't interest me at all. Sitting through many festival movies for me, it feels like torture, unless it's like a fun horror film festival or something. If I have screenings of my movies that I put on, I never do it in theaters. I do it at bars where people can, laugh and drink and joke around. I've done them outside at swimming pools. I've done them, we have a little bayou here in New Orleans called Bayou St. John, and we set up a giant screen on the bank of it and people canoed up. That's the idea, is watching it in an environment like that is what's up. Or with your friends at home, I don't think it's a movie you watch alone. I think it's something you watch to indulge and have fun. And it is a group activity, I think, a lot of times. I mean, I enjoy a schlocky movie on my own, but it's so much better sitting there watching it with someone. It's great. I have a great idea for a shark trilogy that I hope to make. Hopefully that'll happen, and I think it's a slam dunk, but I have to kind of figure out the rights of it all, because I'd love to do a live action Street Sharks. That was a pivotal show for me growing up. I have an idea of a classic 90s trilogy of it. The first where you see them in their prime, and then the next one's like The Secret of the Ooze, if you will. And then the third one, they obviously travel through time. It was actually so much fun to go film. Steven Scarlatta, who directed it, when he reached out to me, his doc about Alejandro Jodorowsky, if you remember I said how much I love that director, is one of my favorite documentaries ever made. And so he reached out to me and I instantly knew who he was. And I was like, whatever you're doing, if you're emailing me, I'm in whatever capacity you want. The interview could have been an hour. It was the sort of thing where we couldn't stop talking. It was so much fun to just nerd out on horror and shark movies all day with those dudes. But it was a blast to film, and I love the way it came out. It's awesome. At this point, yes. I feel like I've tempted fate. It's just the sense of irony would be too strong. Maybe after one shark movie, I wouldn't be nervous to go in the ocean. What force of nature could resist having me be eaten by a shark? That's just too good. It's one of my favorite shows that I've done. It's a blast to work on and so cool. It's a show that it's a big show. It's not stressful. It's the right amount of people, the right people, and it just is awesome to work with. The post-producer on that show, Guinevere McPherson, too. I love working with her. She's brought me on to some other pilots and stuff as well. I have a positive effect when I work closely with someone, and I think a lot of people find me really relaxing and reassuring. I'm not oh, it's not going to work sort of person. I'm like, oh, okay, here's what we do. I love action adventure. I love a kind of mashup with horror. I think there's a lot of really great examples of it. One of my favorites might be, this could be controversial, people might say that's not a horror movie, Stargate. I think that has a lot of horror elements. It's a terrifying antagonist that you're like, how will they defeat him? His henchmen, terrifying, Movies like that are great comfort movies. Last night I fell asleep to Total Recall, the original Total Recall. There's these horror movie elements, but at the heart, it's this action adventure movie. It's very much 80s, early 90s action movie kid. I love RoboCop, and I think there's a bridge there. It's like that sci-fi action adventure horror melding. Those are always my favorite movies and my comfort movies for sure. I'm a big fan of Ari Aster. I love Hereditary. My brother, he lives in Germany, but he was back in town. We're talking about movies. We've always watched movies together, and I was like, what's in the last 8 years that I've seen you, what are movies that you watch that you like? And we were showing each other movies. I was like, let's watch Hereditary. And he made it about 15 minutes in and he paused it. I'm too scared to watch it. And I forget that some people can't get through a horror movie. It was at night, and so the next day I was like, hey, it's the morning. Do you want to finish watching it while we eat breakfast? Eventually forced him to watch it, and he was like, that was a great movie, and I'm really mad at you for making me watch it because it'll bother me for the rest of my life. And I feel like I get that. It's a great example of these things that you hold inside that you never let out. This family tension, maybe things that you've never said to your mother that you hold inside, or ways that you feel about family members that you just can't express. How far would you have to be pushed before you just yell it in their face? That's a great character piece. That's a great example of character being key to horror being really good. I started working at SyFy in a time where monster movies were very popular in the United States, and in other territories like, Asia and Europe, disaster movies were very popular. The executive producer I was working with at the time would say it's both. The foreign title is Star Wars and the domestic title is DC Falls, or there was a great one where it was like a school, Haunted High was the name of the movie. Foreign title was Ghost Quake because there was an earthquake and then there were ghosts in this high school. It had to be both. And so it led to some hilarious, ridiculous things. In retrospect, so funny. I mean, it was frustrating at the time because I was like, what are we doing? Why does there have to be an earthquake and everything now? One of my favorite ones I edited was Arachnoquake. That title works everywhere. You don't need to change that one. That's a great New Orleans movie where it takes place in New Orleans. There's an earthquake in New Orleans, and then turns out under New Orleans there's giant fire-breathing spiders that come out through the crag. It stars actually Edward Furlong as well, so I highly recommend it. I always say Christmas is the new Sharks. You can tell I'm like flummoxed by it. But I guess I don't understand it. It's the opposite of horror very much. In how we were talking about the unexpected and this primal fear. It's the opposite thing. It's like a tranquilizer. You know what's going to happen. You know it's going to be okay. And whenever we make those movies, the networks even have a term that they use called Christmas conflict. Nobody can have cancer. That's real conflict. The Christmas pageant could get canceled. That's Christmas conflict. Even the problems aren't real problems. There's something about it that's really frustrating whenever you're making them because you're like, this is the Act 1 turning point. This is the inciting incident. All right. They just don't hit, but people love them because it's the holidays and they want a tranquilizer. I think that's kind of where Christmas horror comes in, is it's easy to subvert that feeling because that's the expectation. Oh, it's a Christmas movie and they're gonna fall in love and it's gonna be a Merry Christmas where everybody sits around the tree and drinks eggnog or whatever. I think it's ripe for the picking to to turn, subvert and do horror with it. Hence all the Christmas horror. But I think there could be a lot more Christmas horror, and I think now that we're seeing a big wave like Christmasploitation because they're overproducing these movies to an insane degree. The natural conclusion of that is, farce. And those movies, by the way, they're very quick turnaround. So they wrap and they're like, well, this airs in 3 weeks. And so there's a gun to your head when you're making these things. It's intense. It's the opposite of the content of the film making these. It's tumultuous. I was just making them nonstop, always high pressure, quick turnaround. 4 Christmas movies a year. It's a lot. I don't know if you've ever listened to Christmas music for 12 hours a day for 3 years. Something breaks. It's just like, I can't. I just would imagine they're slicing a turkey and I just imagine the turkey blowing up in their face or something, just dark thoughts about Christmas. It's the only genre of film that is visceral. I mean, maybe when you watch a drama, you connect to a character for some personal reason and you're crying and you feel emotional or whatnot. But I think there's something about fear and triggering fear that puts you in a state that you're missing on your day-to-day. There's something about it that's more savage, more to the core of us. Whenever people watch horror films, they're looking for something deep in themselves, a subconscious id that they have that is something that you don't really access otherwise. You're no longer, running through the trees being chased by lions. But I think that there's something essential and important about having the feeling of being chased by lions. One of my favorite horror movies is It Follows. I think the terrifying thing about that is it's a recreation of what it would feel like if you were an animal being chased by a human. The endurance of something that just doesn't stop coming for you. It made me kind of like think about that concept of primal fear in a different way from like a vantage point of like a non-human earth being. I think horror is the genre that has the potential to literally change your viewpoint about things and let you access things in yourself that you would never otherwise. I have a pilot that I'm going to be directing later this year for a travel show, which is very much outside of anything that I've done. So I have those sorts of loose things this year. And also I recently wrote a script that I'm hoping to pitch out and get made. I'd love to shoot it in the fall. It's not a shark movie, but it's a monster movie. That would be the immediate dream. I mean, ideally, I guess in my future, I'm writing scripts and then directing them and editing them. That's great. That's just me like developing my own ideas and having fun and working with the people I want to work with and, you know, making my art. So that's of course the dream, and I can, you know, do that forever if I am allowed to.